Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network and Steelers YouTube channel. Thank you everybody for joining live today. If you are watching or listening live, if you're not, still appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much. Chris Halicke here, along with Greg Macafee, who is back at his house. He had the day off today, and that's
Yeah.
you need one. I mean, it's a long 3 weeks ahead. It's not a big deal though. No, Greg's been doing quite a bit ever since joining on, and so much needed day off for him. But first day of practice was today here, and I expected a bigger crowd, to be completely honest. Not that there wasn't a lot of people here, but I expected a bigger crowd, to be completely honest. And yeah, it was interesting. Well, Greg, what were some of the things that you were going to be looking for? And I'll tell you whether the thing happened that you're looking for, or it didn't happen, or whatever else.
Well, I guess to start, I mean, I was able to kind of follow along with the feed, obviously, a little bit today and kind of see what was going on. But I think we've all been curious about how the rookies are going to work into the mix early. I saw that Peyton Wilson got some snaps next to Patrick Queen for a little bit, but Troy was kind of working with the second team as well. So I guess what did that look like here early on the first day?
Well, the first day, I have to say, more than anything, Barber, thanks for the Navy shout out. Wearing my Navy polo today, repping my wife. No, but the one thing that I took away from it is that it was a light day. It was not going to be. They didn't even do 7 shots today, which if in case Sean here brings up and says no pads is likely why. They don't even put pads on until next Tuesday. That's kind of along with the CBA. That's collectively bargained. They're not allowed to do padded practices until a certain point in training camp, and then they can only do them so often. B-Phil tells me to be careful of the heat. Man, I'll tell you what, it is 82 degrees outside, and I cannot remember a day in Texas in which it was 82 degrees at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in July. I am loving the weather right now. But yeah, it was a light practice today. It was a light practice. Not like I said, didn't even do 7 shots. If you don't know what those are, that's the offense versus the defense for 2-point conversions, pretty much.
Yeah,
like from the 2-yard line, and it's just who wins in those 7 reps. And they didn't even do that today, so it was a pretty light day. Obviously, the big news of the day was Russell Wilson did not participate. He was in his uniform. But he was wearing a ball cap, didn't even have his helmet with him, didn't take part in any individual drills, in warm-ups, in any reps at all. It was all Justin Fields with the first team. Mike Tomlin classified it as he said that Russ woke up with a tight calf. Now, I don't know if we want to blame the dorms here at Saint Vincent College for that, or just what happened. But either way, he woke up with a tight calf. And so Tom Arthur, the quarterback coach, texted Justin Fields this morning at about 6 in the morning saying, hey, you're going to be running first-team reps today. And so but that was the big news of the day. There were no other injuries to report. There was one point where Connor Hayward seemed to be cramping up a bit and needed to be stretched out. That's typical during training camp. The humidity, the heat. So it's pretty typical stuff. But like as you mentioned, Greg, we got our first look at what the rookies were going to be doing. Troy Fautanu was same as it was in OTAs and minicamp. Fautanu was on the right side. And so that meant your starting offensive line from left to right was Dan Moore Jr., Isaac Seumalo, Nate Herbig, not Zach Frazier, but Nate Herbig at center, then James Daniels, and then Broderick Jones on the right side. So Fautanu was second-team right tackle. Zach Frazier was second-team center. Again, this is day 1 of training camp. I think the initial reaction for fans is to overreact and to be like, oh, my God, I can't believe that Fautanu. It's the first day of training camp. Even I talked with Calvin Austin for a little bit today. He split some first team reps with Van Jefferson opposite George Pickens. Even Calvin Austin, he was asked, like do you feel good about that? He's just like, I'm taking no stock in that. We don't even have a depth chart yet. So that's the mentality that everybody should try to have.
Yeah, I mean it's early. It's early. It's very early. One other thing I did want to ask you was obviously opportunities like this for Justin Fields are absolutely ginormous. I mean, when he gets the opportunity to take first team snaps, if he wants to make an impression for this year or even beyond the next year, if the contract situation ends up working out, what did he take advantage of the opportunity? Did he look good out there with snap? I know it's early, it's obviously day one, but what did he look like?
So I asked Mike Tomlin that, and he pretty much gave that same answer. Being like, it's the first day. He took it the way he normally would. When he was asked that, he was like, I'm just trying to be the same guy. That's in our Steelers feed too. But in terms of how he looked, and Matthew asked this a bit ago, said, how did Justin look? I thought he looked pretty good. So the one thing that you can really see, and again, this is me getting my eyes on him for the first time in person. Yeah. For people who have obviously covered OTAs and minicamp have already seen it. He throws a really good football. He just he throws coming at it from the analysis side. He really does throw a good football, and I'm not just talking about. And it's already on social media, this bomb that he threw to Van Jefferson. Rainbow arc, perfect placement. In the bucket, Van Jefferson didn't have to break stride, literally right there in the breadbasket. But we already kind of knew just from looking at numbers alone that Justin Fields knows how to throw the deep ball. And you can look on film for just a little bit. He can throw the deep ball. He's proven that. He proved that at Ohio State, and he's even proved that in Chicago. Yeah. But in terms of how he looked for everything else, I didn't see anything that made me go, okay, wow, this dude is washed or anything like that. I think the time where you're really going to get to see what Justin Fields is made of in this particular offense is whenever he really gets to face defenses that are able to go full blown, full board, and he's having to face some significant obstacles that the defenses are trying to do. And I especially want to see that over the middle of the field. Because Arthur Smith is going to want to attack the middle of the field. But my God, the numbers haven't been good for Justin Fields over the middle of the field. I want to see how that looks. But one thing I noticed, and again, this is one thing I wanted to try to watch for, is what are the plays looking like? And it's hard to see from the sideline and everything like that, but I did see a lot of misdirection. I saw Connor Hayward lined up in the fullback position a couple of different times. So that's one thing to kind of earmark for the future. Like, how does that look? Okay, what does it look like as practices continue? What does it look like when preseason begins? A good amount of play action, some stuff that you would expect from an Arthur Smith offense.
Did I see Darnell Washington was lining up in the backfield as well?
I don't recall seeing it in person, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. I could have been updating the feed or something like that when it happened. But I'm not exactly sure about Darnell Washington lining up in the backfield. The one thing I will say about Darnell Washington, and I there's a lot of fascination with this guy. But there was one rep I saw, he caught a pass, and this was even during individual drills. This was not during offense versus defense. It's just he looks awkward when he has to come down with a catch sometimes. And there was one rep where it was, I think the way DK described it when we noticed it happening was it just wasn't, he didn't look athletic doing it. And I'm beginning to be a little pessimistic about his future as a receiving threat from the tight end position. We know he can block, but I'm beginning to be a little pessimistic, and whenever he has to do anything other than just run down the seam. Not saying he can't run your out routes and everything like that, but anytime you're going to ask him to change direction or do anything where it requires a good amount of athleticism, I'm beginning to get a little pessimistic. It's something that I want to keep an eye on as training camp continues, though.
Mm-hmm. Were you able to glean, like, I guess, just what the offense looked like? I mean, obviously, like you said, first day, everything like that, but what were your impressions of just kind of how it looked in general of them running plays? And
well, it started off really, 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 really rough for the offense, and that was there was a play in which Najee Harris got confused on what motion he was supposed to do, and he went from one side of the quarterback to the other side, then started to go out split. Well, I mean, it was obvious illegal motion, and the entire team, everybody was just like, oh, because anytime the offense screws up, the defense they'll hound, if you've ever watched training camp in person, like from a fan's perspective, anytime one unit screws up something, the other unit is the first one to be all over them and give them a hard time about it. And so, well, when that happened with Najee, the defense, of course, gave Najee a hard time. Coaches gave Najee a hard time. There was a play in which Connor Hayward made a very nice catch on an out route to the sideline, was able to stay in bounds and try to get some more after the catch, and then was stripped. So there was a really nice back shoulder throw by Justin Fields to George Pickens, and Pickens didn't come down with it. It just looked like it hit him in the hands and he didn't catch it. So those were kind of early on. I think as the day went on, the offense started to look a little bit better. Of course, all offenses seem to look pretty good whenever it's 7-on-7. That's when the offense looked the best, and that's not an accident. That's usually when offenses are looking the best. But I want to see more from the offense. I'll put it that way. And I want to see more from the defense too. But the offense in general, it was especially early on, it was like, oh boy, like this is, don't want to try to make day one of training camp indicative of what the season might be like. Right. But they got some things to clean up if that was the first impression.
Was the defense kind of flying around? I mean, we've been talking about the speed that they added an inside linebacker and everything like that. What were your impressions there? I saw that they tooled out the 3 safety package as well at one point. What were your impressions?
I was first, at one point I was, because you're at different points, you're trying to focus on different things. And at one point I was like, okay, I'm going to watch Minka. And literally the next rep, it was Minka playing back, and it was, they had 2 other safeties. It was KZ and then Deshaun Elliott. And then a little bit later, it was KZ, the one playing back, and like Minka was lined up almost on the outside, but that might have just been the with the coverage they were in versus the formation that the offense was in. And then Deshaun Elliott was the one that was typically going into the box, and I expect that Deshaun Elliott he seeks violence, he seeks physicality, and so his skill set really fits that box safety. And so I think he'll be a better version of what I think Keanu Neal was supposed to be last year. Okay. And I liked the 3 safety look when it was out there. I think the defense is way ahead of the offense, and that kind of goes without saying. That's kind of like, well, duh. The defense should be ahead of the offense because it's the same coordinator. Yes, there's some new players, but it's a lot of the same guys. Previously, it's the same system. But the defense looked way ahead of the offense. And again, new offensive coordinator, new quarterbacks, new players, young players on the offensive line. I expected there to be growing pains with the offense, but it does look like the defense is way, way, way ahead of the offense right now. And we'll see how it continues to unfold as practices continue. And then, of course, whenever they put pads on next week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was something that we all probably would have expected coming into training camp, is just because of what they added on the defensive side of the ball and everything like that. So I don't think that's anything surprising. I mean, I think it's probably going to be a pretty consistent theme throughout the early parts of training camp. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Sebastian asked a question here. He says, "How did the offense look in training camp a year ago, though?" Well, first off, I can't physically attest to that, just because I wasn't here covering training camp last year. But I think what this is alluding to, if I'm mistaken, Sebastian, I'm sorry, but the offense looked amazing during the preseason. Like Kenny Pickett looked like a new quarterback that this offense was going to be more than competent, that it was actually going to be an offense that could put up some points. And then obviously we know how that played out, and that was not the case. But and so that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say, that the offense having a slow start means that, oh, this offense is going to suck. I'm not saying that at all, but it's just it's not a good first impression, and so it's just going to make me want to pay a little bit more attention to what's going on offense as they continue to work things out. They're still in the very early stages of installing this offense. There's still a lot more to go. There's 3 weeks of training camp. There's all of preseason. I think for a lot of people, and especially because this, the question came up with Omar Khan today about, possibly trading for a receiver and stuff like this, because that question is always going to come up every time Omar talks now. And it's just that, at one point, throughout all those questions, he said, it's still early, and it is. It's still early for a lot of stuff. And I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to trades and more roster shaping, they think, oh, well, by training camp, you need to have your roster set. And it doesn't necessarily work like that.
Yeah.
It's only July. There's still a long way to go. I don't know. Just same as yesterday. If you're twisting my arm and you're asking me if the trade's going to happen, I would say yes. But him saying, even though he said there's nothing going on right now. Again, the fact that he also said it's still early, talking about flexibility, which I'm going to write about this here in a little bit, talking about the flexibility that there is with the cap space that they have. They really have the ability to do anything that they want with the cap space that they have.
I mean, when I was watching the press conference, that was the one thing that kind of stood out to me the most is, they have all this cap space, and it's going to give them so much flexibility. And I mean, like we've seen in him, since he's taken over, he's going to be patient, and he's not going to go out and spend that money knowing that he could possibly use it in a few different ways, depending on certain situations that kind of, play out. Because, he could have this cap space, something could happen, and all of a sudden they're in a great position to go out and make a move without having to, make any extra moves to make it happen.
They really have the flexibility to do almost anything they want to do. Now, $15 million in cap space, if you're going into the start of free agency with $15 million in cap space and not a lot of room to restructure other contracts, that's not a lot. But when you factor in the cap room that they will have next year, the Steelers have just about any option on the table. If they want to sign Russell Wilson or Justin Fields to a long-term deal, they have the ability to do that. If they want to trade for Brandon Ayuk and make him a $30 million a year receiver, they have the ability to do that. If they want to re-sign Cam Hayward to a contract extension that's going to pay him, top 5-ish money for a defensive lineman, they have the ability to do that. And I'm not saying that they could or they should or they will do any of those things. I'm just saying that they have literally almost any option on the table with what they have. And I think that was the point that Omar was trying to drive home, because there's always all this focus on, are they going to make a trade for a receiver? Is there anything else that you guys are going to do to make the roster better? And I think that's why Omar consistently just said, listen, we've got flexibility to do about anything we want. And we're not often in this position. Yeah. And I think that's the one thing I'm glad that we both kind of took away the same thing from that, because it is important to know, because this is a team that's typically right up against the cap every single year, which also makes me think that something is going to happen this year or at least before the season starts, or even right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I took from that as well, is that he's kind of waiting for one shoe to drop so that he can go out and make a move. Like, and what I was I guess glad to hear the most from that press conference was that he's not super trigger happy. Like he's not just going to go make a move to make a move because they have the cap
No,
space. He is waiting for literally probably the perfect situation to go out and spend that money on something that they absolutely need heading into the season. And I think that just kind of showcases his ability as a general manager even more than what he's done already.
yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think you know there are two things that I want to remind people of what Omar said. For anybody who hears him say there's nothing going on right now, at one point this team, and including Omar himself, said we have full faith in Kenny Pickett, and what ended up happening. Things change, and they may change in 30 minutes. They may change in 3 weeks. They may change on September 7th, the day before the season starts. You never know when something is going to happen and when something is going to change from nothing is going on right now to holy crap, this team is trading for X receiver. It's just, you never know. And them having the ability, really having to only restructure Alex Highsmith's contract, they can still restructure a few other contracts.
Yeah.
To make even more room if they wanted to. So, and B-Phil says, like Kenny asked to leave. I get that. And that was the other part that I was going to bring up, was that we now know that when Omar first approached, Ryan Poles, the GM of the Bears, about Justin Fields, that was way before the trade ended up happening, because it wasn't until Kenny requested his trade that he was like, oh, okay, let me get Ryan back on the phone. Really quick. Steven saying is like, Chris, I feel like you know something. Listen, I'm going exactly off of what Omar has said and also what's been done in the past. We know that that they had full faith in Kenny Pickett, that Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and Art Rooney II all had very similar statements about Kenny Pickett. And yet, as I stand right here on the grounds of Saint Vincent College, Kenny Pickett is not here as a Steelers quarterback. He is wherever the Eagles hold training camp as the backup to Jalen Hurts. That happened. Both of those things happened. And so when Omar is saying there's nothing going on right now, he may be telling the truth right now, but that truth might be very different tomorrow. That truth might be very different come sometime in August. So it is what it, and plus, what does Omar have to gain, even if there was something going on? What does he have to gain by saying, oh yeah, we've been talking with the 49ers? Then you're losing all of your leverage by saying something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of the situation. I mean, like if there's like you said, what's the point of saying something if it's until it actually happens, you know? But he's being patient. He's waiting for the right move, and
if there even is a move to make.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think eventually they're going to do something. If it's not Ayuk, I think they'll do something else, and I think that's why they're hanging on to that. That extra cap space. Like, I think something's going to end up happening eventually. But he's just waiting for that perfect move. He's just waiting for a shoe to fall, I think.
But if it doesn't, and one really quick, the news that came up today, Cortland Sutton signs a restructured contract. And so I would think that Cortland Sutton is off the table when it comes to that. And I think that was pretty much off the table several weeks ago, not only when a Denver reporter kind of shot that down, but also just the little bit of time that Cortland Sutton was actually like doing interviews and stuff like that. There was no indication that he thought even he was going anywhere. So I didn't foresee that happening. I kept bringing up his name because he's been involved in trade rumors, and so I just lump him into the same names that have always been brought up, when talking about Brandon Ayuk and DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin and T. Higgins and all these guys, they've been brought up at one point or another. But it seems like Sutton is now, okay, that's not going to happen. But yeah, I would expect Omar to be patient, to remain patient. And then if a deal doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. That I think that they think, okay, if a deal doesn't happen, then
they wash their hands and move on.
Yeah, and that's why you like we were talking about it yesterday. That's why you have training camp right now, because if a trade doesn't work out, then you've got to evaluate and see what you have here and see, maybe Roman Wilson's the guy. Maybe Calvin Austin has figured out some stuff. I had a good conversation with him today. I'm excited to share that eventually. Because it's interesting to see how this is all going to play out, but Omar is going to do what he thinks is right, even if it means being patient or even not making a move. Like you said, he's not going to make a move just to make a move.
Yeah.
Swan go ahead.
There was one in there. There was one question in there. I can't remember who asked it. It might have been earlier up. But did they do any special teams? Anything with the new kickoff today at all, or anything like that?
They have not, and I don't have an explanation for that just yet. But they did not do anything with the kickoff stuff yet. I do know. I mean, based off of what Mike Tomlin said yesterday, the joint practice with the Bills is going to be a time in which they primarily work on kickoff stuff, the new kickoff rule. I think I'm trying to think, like, I mean, it's hard without any information to kind of maybe guess. Maybe they're waiting until they can get into pads. Maybe I don't know. There weren't any officials today, so maybe they're waiting for officials to show up. I don't know. So there was no explanation for that yet. But and again, it was a very light practice. Like I said, they didn't even do 7 shots. Maybe they just didn't work on the new kickoff rule because it just wasn't in the plan for today. We'll see what happens.
I was just curious after the conversation that, after what Tomlin said yesterday and everything like that, to see, I guess, how much work they're going to put into it and everything. So I was just curious.
Swan asked a question, and we got a couple of minutes left. So Swan asked, do you think Najee not being signed is a distraction for the team? I don't think so. This is not the first time that a player is going in to training camp with going into the last year of his deal. I think there have been other players who have been more not only, I want to say disgruntled, that might be a little unfair, but I would definitely say more deserving of a contract extension. For example, TJ, when that happened. And that, I mean, that was a full blown hold in, and that lasted all through like the entirety of training camp. Into the all throughout the preseason, that lasted a long time, and so I don't think it's a distraction.
I'm right on the same plate with that. I don't think it's any type of a distraction. I think how he's handled it has been all right. Even though he kind of danced around yesterday before talking to us. But I think he'll be able to handle it well, and it'll be fine moving forward.
We'll take this last question here. It's a good one. Randy asks, Chris, how is Arthur Smith displaying his presence so far? Do you notice any of his qualities from your viewpoint? He does seem to be a bit more involved when it comes to the actual coaching between plays and stuff like that, between reps. But to be fair, I mean, I'm not in the business here of getting on a horse or beating a horse to death just because I can. I try to be as fair as possible. It's not like Matt Canada never did any coaching on the field during training camp or anything like that. Every now and then, Matt was definitely getting into the mix, and you could see him talking things over with the quarterbacks or with some of the other position coaches or anything like. I do think Arthur is a bit more hands-on than what we saw from Canada. And yes, somebody else noticed it. He was rocking his mustache. And I understand people want to call it the Skeens mustache, but let's remember that Arthur Smith also had that mustache as head coach of the Falcons last year too. So, but yes, he was rocking the mustache. It was It was, but I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be a good coach. Like, I think he's going to be a good offensive coordinator. I think the coaching is going to be good. I think it's good for sure.
We'll definitely learn more as the days go by and everything, and as they open the playbook more. I would be for sure.
Yeah, open the playbook more, add more plays to the playbook,
Yep.
continue to do more things. Again, it was day one today. It was it was a light practice. There was not a lot done, and I'm not saying that they didn't do any work today. They of course did work. It was good to see. There was definitely some competitive spirit. You could see the excitement from the players. I really enjoyed watching Zach Azzanni do his work as the receivers coach. I think that is a breath of fresh air to that receiver room. There was even at one point where George Pickens and Azzanni kind of got into it a little bit, like to the point where I think even George, as he was jogging off, like Zach kind of got, not I want to say in his face, but almost, and George like pretty much picked up Zach like Azzanni. And I don't know if he was like trying to demonstrate exactly what Zach was telling him to do or whatever, because I think it was on the heels of a running play. And so whatever it was, it didn't like lead to like a fight or anything like that. But it's really, really interesting because, from watching Frisman Jackson coach compared to Zach Azzanni, it is night and day. Two completely different styles.
Do you see a lot of that? Have you seen a lot of that like immediate feedback, like Tomlin was talking about yesterday, with in terms of moving the practices up and everything like that? Like there was going to be more time for those teaching moments. Do you see more of that than you've seen in the past? I know you weren't there last year.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, so I was there too. So I think the teaching moments is going to be something that's going to happen more. Sorry, really loud car.
Yeah.
Back there. But I think there's going to be I think the teaching moments are going to be more what happens off the field more than what happens on the field.
In the meeting rooms.
Yeah, in the meeting rooms, and whenever they have whatever team bonding that they do, there will be they do it every year unless they're going to change it, but they do a home run derby every year.
Yep.
I would expect Russell Wilson to win that as a former professional baseball player.
You would think he's probably the betting favorite. He's probably
you would think, but yeah, I think that is more for what the teaching moments are going to be. Practice is about the same length that it normally is. Actually, it was a little bit shorter today than I think it normally is, about a half hour actually. So again, it was a light day. It was a first day. The starting quarterback didn't practice. I don't remember seeing Cam Hayward do much of anything. Not saying that he didn't participate. He was in uniform. He participated, but I just don't remember seeing him on the field very often. So yeah, and Mark says it here. Might as well ease them in since no pads until Tuesday. That's pretty much the way, and that's pretty much the way that it's collectively bargained. Is that training camp is not supposed to be hit the ground running. It's supposed to be, let's dip our toes in the water first and kind of ease our way in before we start trying to swim in the deep end.
Yeah.
So I do think that is the ultimate goal here. I think that's why Mike Tomlin's press conference at the end of practice was about 2.5 minutes. It was not very long.
I read the transcript and I was like, that's got to be record setting right there.
No, it's pretty typical, especially early on in training camp, and especially when there are no injuries to report other than the obvious one with Russ. It was a very light day, a good day to kind of have an introductory to training camp. So, Stevens, I'm just praying for no injuries. Well, I would say pray for the least amount of injuries as possible, because injuries are going to happen. It's just a question of who and for how long, and say a prayer or do whatever you need to do in order to hope that the injuries don't pile up. But all right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I've got a story to write on Omar Khan. I've also I'm writing Friday Insider tonight, so that'll be up late tonight. It'll be up for sure, when you wake up in the morning. That will be full of some good stuff that I've already gathered here just 2 days back. But I'm B Phil says for Thomas says I'm here so I don't get fined type of presser. No, it was just
he
there wasn't
info.
really wasn't much for Tomlin to say to be completely honest. We could try to sit there and comb through every single rep. That's not what Tomlin's about. He even says I'm not going to try to paint with a broad brush on anything. That's even the Tomlinism that came up when I asked him about do you feel like Justin Fields took advantage of the opportunity he was given? And he's, I'm surprised he also didn't say I'm not seeking any comfort. I don't think Justin Fields is seeking any comfort. I was expecting almost every Tomlinism to come out of it, but yeah. So, and Mark says, thank you for the info. That's what we're here for. This is the time of year in which this show will turn more into actual, let's talk about the actual happenings of the team more than let's try to give our analysis of everything. I can obviously analyze and do that part of it too. I know Greg can too, but this show really is also meant to be like really keeping you guys up to date on what's going on with your team. It was a really good first day. It was, like I said, a lighter day, but it'll be probably a little bit more intensive. I won't say intensive, but probably more like a normal practice tomorrow for it being a non-padded practice, if I had to guess. So, but we'll see whenever they take the field at 10:30 in the morning.
There we go. I'm excited to be back. I can't wait.
Well, yeah, Greg and I will both be back out here tomorrow. We'll see if this is going to be our permanent spot or not. I would prefer something with better lighting, but I also enjoy the shade too. So either way, we'll figure it out. But we'll have a show tomorrow. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Like I said, Greg will be back out here with me here at Saint Vincent College tomorrow. And then obviously the weekend, we won't be doing a show because we don't do the show on the weekend. And so Monday will be obviously after Friday, then Monday will be a show, but we'll have a show Monday, but there is no practice on Monday because it's a player's day off. And so there's no media availability or anything like that. So really, really quick, just before we wrap up, did anybody see Joe Burrow's hair?
Yes. I was completely caught off guard. Supposedly, it was part of a bet with a teammate, I believe, from what I understand. Someone said that if he did it, the other guy would do it, and now the other guy's got to pay up within a week. I can't remember who it was.
That is hilarious.
But yeah,
I just wonder. I'm just waiting for him to eventually say that he's the real Slim Shady or something. And like, it's hilarious because now as soon as I bring that up, somebody like already a couple people saying he already looks like Slim Shady, which is so funny.
He had that hair color back in high school too. He's done it before. He's been there. I mean, covering high school football and everything like that, you see that all the time. You see like teams do it as a camaraderie thing. I don't think we'd ever see that on the professional level, but I've seen it multiple times covering high school football and everything like that. So I thought it was pretty funny.
Mr. CJ Jr. says he looked like Billy Idol, man. That's kind of a good one too. That's a good reference too. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow. Greg and I will both be here live from Saint Vincent College, wrapping up day 2 of practices here at training camp, and excited to talk about it. Until next time, catch you guys on the flippity flip. See you later.
See you later, guys.